I worked with Paul on the district membership committee a few years back in 2019. I had the very great pleasure of mostly speaking to him on Zoom at the time because he is from regional SA, and it's wonderful to have a district governor from the regions who can relate to the regions as well as from the city. Now, I'm sure you've read his bio. It is rather extensive, and I'm not going to go into that today, but I will say that in the time that short time that I've ever spent speaking with Paul, I have found him very progressive and forward-thinking. So I've been looking forward to this year, and we're looking forward to hearing Paul's thoughts today. So please welcome Paul Thomas, AM.
Thank you, Lisa. Well, I hope I don't disappoint with the year if you've got these aspirations of what you expect the year to be. To President Rajiv and our past district governors that are here, guests, Rotarians. It's great to be here. I'm doing things a little bit differently this year. I'm doing some club visits where it's over a meeting and a chat, and others we're getting together for some projects. So I looked at some of your fundraising efforts there, and there'd be a couple that I'd love to be part of. 17th and 18th, I'm in Roxby Downs, otherwise I'd be at your wood sale. But there's a couple of others there that perhaps we might be able to schedule in. I might be able to direct traffic at the magic show. I'm no good at magic, but I might be able to do something else. So I didn't want to come here and recite all the things that Rotarians are doing or not doing, and I didn't want to go on about membership issues that Rotary are facing. We know those, we hear those regularly. Back in February, as part of the International Assembly, which was all done on Zoom, similar to what we'd been doing for the last few years, we only got to know people through the screen. But I did have an early morning chat, a 2:30 a.m. early morning chat with Jennifer Jones and her husband Nick. And even though it was so early in the morning, her personality was infectious, and I could quickly appreciate why she had been chosen to be our international president this year. And she shared with us why she wanted Rotarians to be part of this year and Imagine Rotary. She went on and said, we can imagine it, we can achieve it. If you dream it, you can become it. And she asked us to dream big, to continue that end to polio. And we've only learnt in the last few weeks that polio has again been detected in the United States and in the UK. So there is still more work to do around polio. She wants us to continue to bring positive peace, and Rotary still do their work, particularly with the United Nations around peace. The empowerment of girls, and obviously she has a genuine interest in girls and their education. The environment, and our district is doing quite a bit with the environment. I was at Calpram last week and had a look at some of the work that Rotarians are doing up at Calpram Station. And she wants us to inspire hope. And it's interesting that last night I attended the Regency Park Rotary Club, and they had a guest speaker Efran, who was 54 weeks ago, was on the streets of Kabul trying to get to the airport to be evacuated. He was an interpreter who had worked with the coalition forces, had worked for the Australian Embassy, and therefore was already targeted by the Taliban. He, with his wife and 3 little boys and his parents, desperately tried to get along that roadway to the airport. And he shared this in some visual photographs that he took. He had 10% left on his phone, and the Australian soldiers were trying to detect him with this phone, where in this huge crowd he was, so that they could grab him and his family and put them on an aircraft. Luckily, within those 10% that he had left, he was just picked up, and now he's here in Adelaide. And he gave a very passionate speech about those last days of Kabul and what his new life means. But I was sitting next to him and he said, I don't know where my car is. It's on the street somewhere in Kabul. I don't know who occupies my house. I don't have a wedding photo anymore. We have to start a new life and we have to form a new life. And it was interesting that through the support of the Adelaide Light Rotary Club, he's getting some of that support to start a new life. And it was after hearing that story, it makes you feel so proud that you are a Rotarian and why you want to be a Rotarian. Jennifer Jones has also asked us to provide water to the thirsty and food for the hungry and knowledge to the illiterate. But she's particularly has a huge emphasis on diversity, equity and inclusion, hoping that this is going to open up some new avenues of membership. And I've heard this diversity, equity and inclusion for many years, having been involved with local government, but it was normally, when we're talking about diversity, equity and inclusion, it was about female elected members and ensuring that they took on leadership roles. But diversity, equity and inclusion now for Rotary is much more than that. We need that our community, have our Rotary clubs reflect who our communities are. And it will be interesting for us as Rotarians as we can work with our communities over the next year or so, particularly as the federal government do their consultation around the voice that they're proposing, where Rotary will fit with our First Nation people. And Jennifer Jones had this very issue in Canada with the First Nation people of Canada, in where Rotary fits and where First Nation people will fit within Rotary. But she also wants us to invest in our membership. She wants to ensure that our clubs make members feel valued, that they feel that they belong and that they can have fun. And looking through some of your fundraising escapades that you've got coming up, there should be some fun there, as well as some service. The issue that was pointed out is that Rotary don't have any difficulty in attracting new members, but we do have trouble retaining them. And it's hopefully that this work around investment in our members will help us keep members. For some time I've been frustrated that Rotary spends a lot of time and energy and money on glossy magazines, and I've got a couple here that you, as District Governor now, I'm not only getting RDU, but I'm getting one out of the US. They're great magazines and great stories. This one is about the storyteller-in-chief, about Jennifer Jones, and she shares her stories about her Rotary activities. But these magazines tell the stories about what Rotary does to ourselves. We don't spend that same energy in telling other people what we do. And I think that's what we need to do. So Jennifer Jones is wanting us to tell the stories, our Rotary stories, share them. So Winston Churchill wrote, "We make a living by what we get, but we make a life by what we give." And I think that certainly underpins my involvement with Rotary. An involvement with Rotary that began in the middle of 1976. I'd successfully applied to be a Rotary exchange student with the then Rotary Club of Kadina. I didn't know a lot about Rotary, but I'd been friends at school with some Rotary exchange students. My application required that I list my hobbies, my interests, and the countries that I had a preference to be an exchange student and the preferences that I didn't want. I recorded Japan and Asia because I didn't have much interest in that. I'd only been studying modern European history. I didn't eat rice, I didn't eat fish, and I ate with a knife and fork, so Asia was off the list. However, I did receive a phone call from the District Youth Exchange Chairman, past District Governor Terry Edwards, who I happened to catch up with a few weeks back, advising me that I'd been selected to go to Japan. The only Japanese words that I knew were Toyota, Seiko, and Konnichiwa. I didn't think it was going to be a possible year or experience. And I quietly and hopefully politely declined the offer. However, he persuaded me to continue on, reminding me, he shared with me that Paul Harris wrote, "Ignorance is a menace to peace." and that one's naivety is not of his own choosing, but whatever it may be, it is entitled to respect, and all nations have an honourable place in this world's family. So as a 16-year-old, I took that on board and embarked on that journey to Japan. It's interesting that 45 years later, our Rotary International President, Jennifer Jones, would choose her theme, Imagine Rotary, because now I could not imagine my life without Rotary. My first host family was the councillor. He was also the District Youth Exchange Chairman and a past District Governor. And in September of 1976, he and his family and my 5 other host families visited Adelaide so that they could meet with me and our family. All got together and formed a relationship before I even left home. And their parting words were, "You'll be the first faces that you see when you arrive in Tokyo." And they were. Then in 1985, the roles were reversed. I was the president of the Northern Yorke Peninsula Club, and we were about to host a young Japanese lad. And I did the same. I was in Japan, and I made sure that I was able to meet with Kohei and his family and give him that same assurance that when he got to Adelaide, he'd see us. Nelson Mandela wrote that there can be no greater gift in one's giving at one time than the energy to help others without expecting anything in return. And that's what I learned from my year in Japan. Rotary are people of action, whether it be the past president, the RI president, past district governor, or the current district governor, or a member of a Rotary club. We can give without expecting something in return. The Rotary families that hosted me gave me so much. And as past President RI, President Shaker said to us last year, serve to change lives. That's what they did to me in Japan. They served to change my life. The city of Ashikaga in 1977, where I was hosted, was 650,000 people back then, and I'd left a small country town with 3,500 people. The contrast of my 2 homes was significant, yet by the end of that 1977, I was a familiar face in the streets. People would call out my name, they'd want to have a chat to me. It was interesting, it's the only time in my life being in Japan that when they took photographs, they pushed me to the back with the tall ones. There was no other people in the town that spoke English, so everybody wanted to speak English. People in Japan learn English for about 8 years, but they don't have that opportunity of conversation. So the Rotary Club took on the opportunity and they set up an English conversation school. So I'd do at night, I'd do classes of English conversation. And that school's still going today, run by the Ashikaga East Rotary Club, but they actually pay the teachers today, and they're usually Australians, and they live for 12 months in a house that's provided and teach English conversation. School was a bit different. I did music and English lessons. I started on maths, science, but I became a hindrance in the class, asking too many questions and not being able to understand what was saying. So they had me doing English and music. I had to play the piano to accompany the choir, school choir. Now that was interesting because initially I didn't even know what they were singing, let alone having to follow them. But we got through. At that time in 77, Greg Norman was the household name in Japan. A Rotary Club, which met above the bank of Ashikaga Bank, was an all-male club of 80 members. They had a female administrator, and there were many friendships forged at Rotary meetings. There were business opportunities that were ignited, and there were golf challenges placed. I quickly learned that many a deal was sealed on the golf course. And as I said, Greg Norman was an Australian and a household name, so I was expected that I had the same handicap. I certainly had a handicap, but I was still included with the golf games. It was interesting, a few years back I had the opportunity when I was Mayor of the Copper Coast to turn the first sod of the Greg Norman's Dunes golf course at Port Hughes. Greg Norman was present. I shared that story about golfing, and we went on to play several holes of golf together. I think he understood that handicap by the time we'd finished. It was a wonderful year to be in Japan as an exchange student, and when I'd completed that year, I received a certificate that said I'd spent 12 months as a Rotary exchange student promoting international goodwill. But so many experiences, so many memories, so many lessons, a new character, a new vision, new understanding all lay behind that certificate. A certificate that still remains in my office. And I look upon it each day and think of those wonderful opportunities that were afforded me. I've been back to Japan now 15 times, and I still, 45 years later, talk on the phone with my host families each month. But that relationship around youth exchange was strengthened in 95-96, as I mentioned earlier, when as president of the Northern Yorke Peninsula Club, we hosted an exchange student from the Gifu area of Japan, Kohei Funahashi. He was a bright student, spoke reasonable English, and also had a hunger to learn. Unfortunately for Kohei, circumstances within our club after his arrival left him only to have Kathryn and I as a host family. Thankfully, we all got on well, and there were some other members that assisted by taking him away on holidays to provide him some new experiences and perhaps us some spare space to ourselves. I had to be constrained in my wish to speak Japanese and talk about Japan all the time. I needed to share the Australian experiences with Kohei. However, being proud of that Japanese past, I was confident for his future. As I said, Kohei was a good student. He was competent in maths, chemistry and physics. And he attended the Kadena Memorial High School, where he was convinced by his teachers to undertake Year 11 SACE course, even though he wouldn't be there to do Year 12. He obtained exceptional results despite English being his second language. Following Kohei's return to Japan at the end of his exchange, he was home for a short while with an ambition to be a doctor. But in Japan, unless you had a family that had a medical background or attachment, it was very hard to get into medical school. You had to pass an entrance examination and the costs would be prohibitive to his family. We were asked whether we would host Kohei again for 12 months to complete his Year 12 studies, and we did. He came back as a private student and completed Year 12 at Kadena. He then went on and applied for university and went to the University of South Australia studying medical radiation. We had him located across the field here at St Mark's College during the semesters, and he'd come back to us at the holiday period. And after graduating from the University of South Australia, he worked at the Royal Adelaide Hospital Medical Imaging Department and took on postgraduate studies at Flinders in medicine. He would prepare his assignments, then email them to me. I'd correct his English grammar, email them back. The two of us learned medical terms, procedures and diseases during his year at medical school. He did graduate, his father from Japan and I, present. He's still here and lives at St Peter's. He's a partner now of Benson Radiology. He married a good fellow student from Flinders, Bianca, who is a specialist at the Lyell McEwen and at Modbury. I can recall sitting in our dining room with his future mother-in-law, who was from Hong Kong, and if those that know the Japanese and the Chinese have got some long conflicts. And she leant across to me as he walked out of the room clearing the table, which was a little unusual for a Japanese lad to be clearing the table and washing the dishes, but that was something he learned in his year at school. And his future mother-in-law leaned across and she said, "I don't like him. I don't think it's a good idea that these two get together." And I calmly responded, "Some days I don't like him either. But after a good sleep, it all looks different, let them work it out." Well, that they have. He now has an 8-year-old son, Haru, who also comes to Wallaroos each school holidays when his parents are working. So Rotary does change lives. It changed our lives and it changed his lives. We correspond with his parents and his family regularly. They've all been and spent time with us in Australia as his brother and his nephews and niece. Imagining Rotary allowed Kohei to be a doctor. It changed his life as it changed mine. That year away as a student laid the firm foundation for me as I took on civic duties as mayor for 18 years. In my office, I keep a framed four-way test. Having spent those 28 years in local government and 18 as mayor, as I said, I quickly was to learn that you can't keep everybody happy all the time. It's a bit like being district governor. Surprisingly or not, I'd receive some phone calls from unhappy ratepayers, or I would read letters to the editor that weren't overly flattering. There was a complaint or two. And I'd get these phone calls and I would usually respond that I don't get up in the morning, suck a lemon and think how I can upset somebody today. But I would share with them the four-way test, as I expected similarly the four-way test for my fellow councillors. Local government also exposed me to change. I was involved with a number of amalgamations of local government, and to those communities, change was fearful, a little like regionalisation for Rotary. But I reinforced to our ratepayers that we could either leave our community as it was, be ignorant to what was happening around us, and the towns would dwindle and we would lose services, or we could have an opportunity to look and investigate new ways and keep our town vibrant and our community vibrant. And I think that's the same opportunity we face for Rotary. Rotary and local government have some great opportunities together. We, as a council, forged relationships with our local Rotary Club. Many projects in our community reflect joint projects between local government and Rotary. One of the privileges of Mayor is to perform a citizenship ceremony, and part of that ceremony involves a pledge of commitment to Australia. It acknowledges that no one who applies for Australian citizenship is expected to renounce the cultural identity, customs or traditions of their heritage. Australia's own heritage is made much richer by the contributions from other lands. And Rotary's the same. Each time I recited these words, I'd think about that year away as an exchange student. Now, amongst all of what's happened with youth exchange, I married Kathryn. We knew each other at school, but we didn't have anything to do with each other. However, our life together has been a partnership. Literally, for better, for worse, sickness and health, and she's sick today and I'm not with her. She's going to a specialist. She's had COVID and unfortunately some side effects from that. I think if you were to ask Kathryn, she's probably still looking for the better. When I was asked to be mayor, she wasn't that thrilled about the idea, and she'd rather be at the back of the room than at the front of the room. And I said to her, though, if you don't want to be involved, I can do it on my own. I couldn't have done it without her. She was the secret to that success, and I think the same as I take on this journey. She's very supportive, and she's taken on two projects, partner projects. She's given me copious notes, more notes than what my own speech is, and much smaller writing, so I'm not going to share them. Hopefully she'll get an opportunity to do that with you at some other stage. But she's chosen two projects here in South Australia, the Childhood Cancer Association and the Peter Nelson Leukemia Foundation. Kathryn had her own experience with cancer a few years ago, and she wanted to give back the support that she received. And we also forged a friendship with Marjorie Jackson Nelson when I was mayor, and we knew about her work with the Peter Nelson Foundation. So, as part of that this year, we have these hospitality packs or support packs for hospital. And in it, there's some toys, games, resources, toiletries that will be given to a child when they approach the Childhood Cancer Association. They have a luggage tag that has the Rotary emblem on it. We're hoping that each Rotary club in our district will consider donating a little over $400 that a bag can be purchased and made available and to the Childhood Cancer Association to be given to a child who is diagnosed with cancer, and they'll have that through their journey. And similarly with the Peter Nelson Foundation, Marjorie will have a birthday next week. She keeps telling me that she's getting old and running out of time. She set up that foundation 45 years ago. Peter was a member of the Unley Rotary Club at the time, and she hopes that through the work of SAMRI, and they're getting very close to some findings around the type of cancer and the gene that killed Peter. She's hoping that her legacy through the Peter Nelson Foundation will be that cure for that particular gene. And we hope that through the year we can donate some additional funds to the Peter Nelson Foundation to support that work. If I were asked to condense my Rotary Youth Exchange experience, I would look at what we share in this year ahead. And again, I just quickly share two phrases from the late South African President President Nelson Mandela. A good head and a good heart are always a formidable combination. And where people have a goodwill to get together and transcend their differences for the common good, peaceful and just solutions can be found even for those problems which seem most intractable. Rotary and its ideals recited in whatever language, wherever they are in the world, can make a better place. We can build international goodwill and understanding. As RI President Jennifer Jones has asked, I shared my Rotary story, but we need to build stories together, and with your support, we can together imagine Rotary. Thank you.
Thank you, Paul. I think we have probably one or two short questions. Florian always has one. No?
Sorry.
This might be, because I don't know what is happening. So you made a comment to the Rotary student exchange. Where is that currently at? So is that something that is still ongoing in the district, or is that something that we introduce, or?
It is. We have one student here now, Lawrence, from Germany. He's with the Gawler Light Rotary Club. 4 students have been selected recently to go in January from our district to go overseas. We're trying to make those placements at the moment. Not all districts in our zone are going to recommence youth exchange, and that disappoints me. But certainly District 950 has recommenced. Past District Governor David Jones is heading up the Youth Exchange Committee, and so we should have some more students coming in next July, but certainly we're back involved with Youth Exchange.
Okay, well...
Thank you.
So, Paul, we have a certificate of appreciation that we'd like to present to you for today's talk.
Thank you.
And any of the folding money that goes, and the jingling money, in the bowls goes towards our community projects, which has been collected because you've been here speaking with us today. We also have a
Thank you very much.
Lovely Rotary teddy for you as a reminder of your visit with us. All Rotarians and guests, would you please thank our guest speaker today, the District Governor, Paul Thomas.
Thank you.